item today is simplifying local government reform, our council submission, and welcome Luke, thank you.
Kia ora.
I understand, do you have a presentation? There we go.
Yeah, we'll probably be able to fly through this. So today we're seeking the committee's approval of the submission to the Simplifying Local Government proposal. Just a real quick recap, we've gone over this heaps, but the key thing is the proposal is looking at replacing regional councillors with a combined territories board that would be made up of mayors, and they would hold all of the current regional council functions. They would be also responsible for developing a regional reorganisation plan, and that would be required within 2 years of the establishment of the board. Regions can recommend a range of functional options, and they'd be looking at how things could be rejigged, I guess, in terms of how services and infrastructure is delivered across the region. Now, this doesn't just apply to the ECAN functions, it would be looking at across all of the local authority functions as well, right across the region. So a key thing, why this is important, well, this is a once in a generation opportunity and risk for Christchurch. I think that's the key thing. So we need to engage seriously on this. At the moment, we've been given a proposal which is relatively light on the policy detail, and so this is the opportunity we have to raise what our expectations are in a reform like this, in a structure, and also raise the concerns that we have with what's been put on the table. So the summary of our position, ultimately we support the outcomes the reform is looking to achieve. So that's things like reducing duplication, getting greater efficiencies, and ultimately providing the best value services and infrastructure for our ratepayers, not just in Christchurch, but across the region as well. However, we do have some concerns. So the scope of the CTB, it remains unclear, so that creates some uncertainty. And for us, we think that the diluted focus of the CTB being expected to govern the existing regional functions, as well as coming up with a very significant reform of local government across the region, there will be a diluted focus. They're two very distinct roles. One of them is highly strategic, and that being that restructuring. So what we're doing in this submission is ultimately requesting that the government reconsiders the CTB design and the composition, and including whether or not the reform leadership should be separate from ongoing regional governance work. We also want to stress that the transitional arrangements should enable metropolitan scale analysis right from the outset. So, you know, when you look at us, we're a big metropolitan, and so having the requirement to be negotiating or coming up with this plan across the board can have some, I guess, distractions in terms of what's required. So getting into the submission, what we like, we do like the intent of it. So simplifying local government and reducing duplication, improving the long-term performance, resilience and value for money. We do like the functional review first approach. So actually identifying what the functions are, how they're best delivered, and then repackaging them up into the sort of structure that would provide the best value for our ratepayers. And also we do like stronger collaboration, especially where it improves the outcomes. But there are practical concerns, and this is mostly around the process and the composition of the governance structure. So we've already talked about this, but the CTB will have capacity risk. So it's one body expected to govern existing regional functions and lead a major system redesign. There's also questions around its leadership around the RM reforms, which the RM folk will talk about later. There's a risk that there'll be negotiated outcomes. So, having a room and sort of discussing these things and mapping out the structural review, it can become consensus driven, or there's a risk that it could become consensus driven rather than evidence based, because ultimately mayors around the table are accountable to their districts and they'll have their district's best interests when they're coming up with this. We're concerned about the dilution of our metropolitan scale, so voting and representation settings, they may underweight Christchurch's scale. So over 60% of Canterbury's population resides in Christchurch. We want to make sure that the voting settings or whatever governance arrangements there are actually can reflect that. We're concerned with a one-size-fits-all approach. So again, looking at across the whole region, it can mask some of the real performance issues where systems already operate at a metropolitan scale. That's what we want to zoom in on. We're concerned about secretariat independence. So we want to make sure that whoever's supporting or whatever machinery is supporting this group actually has independence, and just to help mitigate any institutional bias that could come out of this. Big thing is the cost and the risk of any amalgamations or any functional transfers. So there's a risk of unfunded mandates or any unjustified cross-subsidisation onto Christchurch. So if we pick up the functions of another region or start delivering other things, we want to make sure that it doesn't have a negative effect on our ratepayers from a financial perspective, but also a service delivery perspective as well. In terms of the timelines for this process itself, they're pretty long in terms of the scheme of things. So the legislation is anticipated to be ready in 2027, mid-2027, and then the plan will need to be developed within 2 years of that. So if you're looking at now, that's over a 3-year lead-in time for this being required to be completed. There's a lot of uncertainty that creates, especially with our own infrastructure planning and service delivery planning, but then we've got all of the other things as well, like the RM reform. There's a spatial plan associated with that, and also we're implementing rates caps and development levies and all of those other things as well. And we are concerned that we're still required to do a representation review within this. There's a high cost associated with that, and if there are any significant changes as a result, we'll have to do it again. So what we want to see, we want to see a true functional review. So we actually want to see the proper analysis and evidence going into whatever the final proposal is. We want metro subgroupings enabled. So we want to be able to immediately kick off some work streams that focus on the metro functions. Evidence-led options, so we want to be able to apply and test multiple models. We want strong governance settings, so clear delegation, decision rules, and voting that reflects the scale and impact that Christchurch has across the region. Independent secretariat. We want treaty partnership embedded right from the beginning, so mana whenua involvement from the outset with existing arrangements protected. We want transparency on cost, so funding follows function ultimately, and we want to understand and see that there are clear transition costs and affordability factored in right from the outset and applied for any changes that are delivered. Early momentum, we want to start now, really, get the ball rolling so we can actually increase the certainty we have so we can move forward with, knowing what's about to happen. And we request that any representation reviews are deferred. In terms of next steps, we are looking at approving the submission today, and then the submission will be lodged on the 20th of February or before.
Thank you very much, Luke. It's very comprehensive and a very clear presentation to help focus our minds. I wonder, perhaps before we start with questions from my colleagues, if you could identify what is in scope and what is out of scope of this paper and this submission. It might just help with some of our questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so what's in scope? I think it's key thing to recognise is this is a proposal. This is not a piece of legislation or a bill that we're responding to. So we don't have the detailed policy design or structures in front of us in terms of what this would look like. So what we're really responding to is a broad proposal for how this restructure will work, how this review will work, and what the governance settings are. So we can't get into the full detail. However, what we've done in the submission is anticipate and extrapolate what we think those proposals mean and what they would mean for us.
So just to clarify, we really can't get into any design issues beyond the consultation at the moment in terms of legislative design, and that we will have an opportunity to have separate submissions later on other matters.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Luke. So I have questions lined up from, here we go. Tyler, followed by Melanie, Pauline, and then Yanni. And Tim, thank you, Tyler.
Kia ora. When referring to evidence, is there any current evidence that we're going to be basing our ideas on?
So a framework for collecting the evidence and having consistent categories and frameworks for doing that and doing that analysis hasn't been supplied to us yet. Okay. So we don't have a framework for having a consistent analytical view of how the functions best operate and how to repackage them. However, that evidence would be available once we sort of develop a consistent way of doing it.
Yep, gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison-Hunt. And now we've got Councillor Coker.
When it talks about the CTB and the dual roles, is it possible for us to potentially put what we would actually like to see there? Because we haven't really done that, and we haven't mentioned about the current regional councils. Like in my view, the regional council should stay in place as it is until a review's undertaken and they know what the next structure is going to be, because otherwise you're creating an interim body that then will change again, and I personally disagree with that. So are we able to put something into this a bit more clearly around that?
If it's the council's view that the current elected members remain for the regional council, we can put that forward. In terms of the ideal sort of structure and the composition of that, we haven't come up with, an ideal what that would look like if it wasn't the regional councillors. We've basically just indicated that there's a strong risk that having that dual function between the two will risk any dilution or distract from the strategic requirements of the reorganisation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would like to, I haven't figured out any wording, but I would like somewhere within this document for it to be included that we would like the regional council to continue till such time as the review has been complete and the next structure has been determined.
Well, I'm going to suggest that there's likely to be some, we won't get unanimity on that around this table, so that'll have to come forward by way of an amendment to be voted on, I suspect. Can I just have some guidance from the Secretariat on that, please?
Sure, you have an option to designate a subset of councillors to make any substantive changes to the submission before it's approved. Outside of that, councillors are more than welcome to put forward individual amendments should they like to see specific wording added to the submission.
So I'd like to suggest that that's probably a substantive and it's not a matter to be deferred to a delegation for minor tweaks and wording. So I think that'll need to be a amendment, and perhaps if you want to work on that while some of the other questions are coming, and if we have to take a break, we'll do that in due course. So next I've got Councillor Cotter, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Look, I was in a similar vein to Councillor Coker around the model. So it's all very well to say that the reasons that we feel that the regional mayors are probably it's not appropriate for various reasons, but what would be a possible alternate model? Like I would say we probably want to retain the mayoral voice around the regions, but we would need to strengthen that to take the workload off, but also to bring in expertise. So how many mayors are there in the 10? So you might 10 or so who have expertise in this local government area. So I'm sort of suggesting that we possibly want to craft some wording. So if we're opposing it just being the regional mayors, we're leaving the door open for any other model that they might want to chuck in. So we want to put some guidance around that. And I would suggest that we have a mix of either all or some mayors and some other expertise on that board. It might end up as a board of 20, but it's a very important piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Cotter. Can I just clarify, Luke? It was my understanding that out of scope for this was any other proposals on governance models. So I'm a little bit unclear about what we can and can't. We've been asked to make some comment, but my understanding, and having spoken with staff before this, was that it wasn't within scope for us now
I'm not
to actually
suggesting
come
we
up with
create
another
the
proposal.
model. I'm suggesting that we be careful of just carte blanche saying not mayors, but leaving a door wide open for who knows what. So you know what I mean?
It's slightly contradictory, because if it's out of scope to be coming up with other proposals, then I'm not sure that we can do that, Councillor Cotter, but I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Luke.
the specificity around what an alternative governance arrangement would look like, I don't think we have enough information to be able to clearly articulate that with confidence. However, we could just indicate a nuance in this, talking about what we'd expect to see from a capability perspective in a governance.
Yes, and that we would like to be involved in perhaps future
I don't think there'll be any
around that.
opposition to that. Thank you.
And also, if I may, have we wouldn't it be wiser to wait for this upheaval before until the RMA reform is completed, timing wise?
Yeah, well, from a systems and timing perspective, ideally we'd actually have a local government review done beforehand, so we'd have got better clarity in terms of what the regional structure would look like, especially when we're trying to apply and implement a regional spatial plan as well.
But Luke, isn't the reality that...
But the reality is we've got to work with what we've got, and at the moment we're highlighting the risk associated with that, and we'll have to implement it based on decisions made from central government.
So we have to do what we're told. And I just do note too that you're saying that, by 2029 it'll be ready to go, but that's still you're saying 3 years, but that's a very short timeline for a piece of work like this. And I think we have noted that. I'm not sure, have you?
We've noted actually there's a long lead-in time for this. So this is 3 years total. It's especially around the uncertainty that it drives. So if we're applying change and significant change, it reduces our ability to think quite strategically, especially for our city and ratepayers.
Exactly. And just one more regarding the costs. Did we find out who pays?
There's no signal on who pays for this, for the reform as such.
Have we put an indication that we would expect the Crown to pay for this?
We've highlighted the risk that there'll be unfunded mandates for anything that come through, and also that there'll be a financial impact on any, I guess, cross-subsidisation that the city may have as a result of any future structure. We haven't signalled anything around the actual work that is required and the costs associated with that to get there.
Have we at least mentioned that this will be a significant cost to whoever pays?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Vic.
Thank you, Councillor Cotter. Councillor Johansson.
Thank you for your detailed submission. I was just looking at page 14, and there's a lot of reference to growth, transport, infrastructure, etc. But my concern is around water. Now we know in Canterbury, for example, ECAN's declared a nitrate emergency. So groundwater in Canterbury is facing significant nitrate contamination, and we're seeing massive increases in that. There's nothing in the submission that really talks about the risk of the proposed model and how that will mitigate the impact of water contamination and environmental degradation. So, for example, we have a Mayoral Forum who's in charge of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, a number of their targets are failing to be met, and yet the proposal seems to say, let's have a similar model. So I'm just wondering, in the context, in the submission, whether there can be greater emphasis on the risks around water quality and environmental protection, given that the current system is failing, and given that the model that's being proposed
Thank
by
you,
government
Councillor Johansson. I think we've got the gist of the question. Luke?
looks similar
Thank
to
you.
what we currently have.
Yeah, so at the moment we're really commenting on the transitional structure and what it's got to deliver. That takes it down a couple of layers in terms of the detail. We can highlight that as well as the infrastructure review and understanding how the functions work, there will be an environmental component of that as well. But I don't think it's appropriate for this particular submission to go down into that level of detail.
Just on page 14 and in bullet points 9 and 8, we talk about the risks from hazards, flood and catchment, coastal erosion, sea level rise, climate adaptation, and long-term impacts of seismic events in urban form, but we don't mention anything about the water quality and the environmental issue with nitrates in our region as being a risk. So I'm just asking if we could just be a little bit more explicit around our concern around the risk and how that is, governed, because that seems like a huge risk to us. That's just not mentioned in here.
Yeah. Can I just clarify? On the face of it, it doesn't appear to be a substantive issue, and it's just something at a reasonably high level to be included in either 8 or 9.
Yeah, we can flag that in the contextual section that we've got in here as well. So applying it to the other
And I
risks.
guess the bigger picture is, how do we get good governance over the water in the region if we don't have a regional council? And that isn't really addressed in here anywhere. So I just think we should be explicit about our concern around that.
Thank you, Councillor Johansson. I think we've got some agreement there to put some tweaks and capture that in there. Thank you, Luke. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you. I'm presuming ECAN will be looking at a 4% rates cap as well as every other council in New Zealand. So with that in mind, you're talking about an early monitoring kind of transition, or looking at how we can transition early or understand it early, because we've got a 3-year timeline. So no one is covering our costs at the moment, even though we'll be looking at a rates cap 27, 28, 29. So I'm just wondering, to the chair, if we can make sure that we are monitoring our costs, our staff costs and time, so we know what we're facing at the end of this journey, because I'm aware that we are faced with a lot of things sent in by central government, and I'm not talking National or Labour or whoever else.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
The other thing is,
can I just get some clarity from staff on that we're able to do that?
We can certainly look at that,
I'd be
It's about
surprised.
capturing it, thanks.
yes. Yeah,
Okay, question, Councillor Scandrett?
I'm concerned, there's been mention of, say, a distance between the staff at the coalface and governance. It's a hangover from the commissioners. So if we have 10 regional mayors running ECAN, or the new council, I'd like to know, and I guess it's the work to be done, is how we can ensure that we can get good efficiencies and reaction from staff at the coalface. Because it does seem sometimes in our seats, when there's a link between council staff and ECAN staff, that there is a speed bump there. And I'm just, because my understanding from this, the end game for this was financial efficiencies and streamlining process. And that is what the two things I don't see.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
So,
I'm not entirely certain what the question is.
Well,
Luke, perhaps you can...
That's the
what's
fundamental intent of the review,
so
is to reduce duplication, improve the processes, and just make it clearer in terms of what the handoffs are between any of the functions that are in the region.
okay.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Here we are, Councillor Kewen.
Yeah, so have we formed a position as a council on what the final makeup of everything looks like? Like, so you go through a massive process, but do we know what it looks like at the end?
No. The council hasn't come up with a final position on what that looks like.
Right.
And we're not expected to at this stage. We
No.
just don't know enough until the functional review.
Correct.
Thank you.
But so how do you submit on something if you don't know where you want to go?
Luke?
So the submissions on the structure and the process that will enable us to get there. So what the proposal is for us to do a functional review as a region and then come up with the most appropriate proposals to achieve the outcomes. At the moment, what we've got in front of us to respond to is what that process may look like and what the governance of that process may look like. Beyond that, we're not expected to really know what that function endpoint would be.
So we don't have a type of structure in Christchurch or Canterbury that we're aiming for, that we...
Not at the moment.
Okay, that's interesting, because for the last 10 years I've heard various elected members many times saying what they'd like to see Christchurch and Canterbury look like, but it's interesting that we wouldn't be heading in a direction based on... Yeah.
Can I just clarify there, Luke? We're in a position, as I understood it, that the form will follow the function, and what we're supportive is a full functional review that will help to inform what we think the form should look like.
Yeah, correct. So historically, council has indicated a preference for unitary options to be investigated in detail, and has shown a desire for that, as well as opening up what a metropolitan model could look like as well. But at the moment, as part of this proposal and this reform, we need to have the evidence and the analysis to be able to support any of those positions that we come up with, and that's what the expectation is.
Right, so just to clarify, you tend to you should only try and fix things that are broken. So are we supporting that this model's broken?
We've acknowledged that there is duplication.
Yep. But there's duplication already within council.
And we're always looking for opportunities to find better efficiencies and get the best value for our ratepayers. I think any review and even any evidence that comes out of that review will be able to tell us what is broken and what is not, and what the best way to repackage it up is in the future.
Thank you, Luke. Well answered. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, hey, thank you. And really good work on this. I'm just keen to drill in a wee bit on the CTB Secretariat. So can you just clarify for me, as it stands now, would that be the Regional Council?
It wasn't clear in terms of what the Secretariat would be. It's assumed that, from our perspective, that's how the current mayoral forum works, and that's looking like that's how it would operate as well. That's why the submission basically says we want to make sure that it is independent or a collective group of advisors from the various councils that are within the CTB. And the capability needs to be really high in terms of actual providing analytical advice and recommendations too. Yeah,
okay. Well, I'm just wondering how we're going to work that in if we do have an amendment to keep the regional councillors on for a further period of time, because I mean in many sense, if we were to do that and they were to be the secretariat for it, it's sort of a bit like fox guarding the hen house in a sense, in that they've got a lot more oversight of a reform, which is not necessarily helpful to the Canterbury region. So how would we sort of address that in the submission if the council were and I'm not sure if they are, but if the council were of a mind to support keeping the regional councillors on for a further period of time?
Yeah, basically, if we were looking to carve the responsibilities of the CTB and having the current regional council functions still governed by the current regional councillors, we wouldn't expect them to be in charge of the regional plan as well. That would need its own separate governance group to look at that, and that's where we talked about having reinforcing that it needs the right capability and representation to do that. So I wouldn't expect the ECAN secretariat that supports their current elected members to be supporting what is effectively an external or bespoke governance structure for this reorganisation.
So if that amendment were to pass, we'd have to be really clear on that.
Yes.
Because we wouldn't want that to occur. Just the other one, and and I just wonder whether we need to be even more explicit around the timing of this, because the longer it takes, the more it costs.
Yeah.
And I'm not an expert in it, but if we can agree on a structure relatively soon, we have taken positions in the past where we've said effectively a unitary or a super city is the way to go. I mean, it's going to save a lot of consultants, a lot of time, a lot of money, and it may actually stop a few of the things like the representation review, even needing to amend the legislation if we can just get on and do it. So I wonder if is there a way we can be more explicit in the submission about speeding up this process altogether? Because inevitably when things take time, we've seen it with like Plan Change 14, they cost a lot more money because we get a lot more people involved. When actually, if we can kind of agree on an outcome relatively soon that we think would be good for Christchurch and obviously Canterbury, then we can just get on with it. Is there a way we can be more explicit around just speeding this up?
Yeah, we can reinforce that we've highlighted the risks around having a long lead-in time for an outcome on this, and we've also indicated that what we want to see is early, fast progress.
Yeah.
So we can reiterate that.
Okay. I mean, I'm just thinking if we are of a mind to keep the last one, but if and I don't know whether we've talked about the regional councillors in the briefings we've had on this yet. I don't know if that's been. Yeah, I'm not sure, but if we're talking about separating them out, I mean, would it be logical to say if they are going to run their term, actually, we need this all ready to go for the next election? So we go, actually, we can concede and say the mayor doesn't need to sit on another 25 meetings a week. He's already got enough to do. You keep the regional council there for 18 months, however long it is till the next election. But the only way we would do that is if the government can guarantee that this thing is ready to go, so that the next elections in Canterbury are for effectively the super city.
We can reinforce that.
I just think there's got to be tension in the system, or else it'll just run away, and the only people that win will be consultants.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder then, Councillor McDonald, whether that's almost like a midway point between what Councillor Coker's thinking about in her amendment and where the submission currently is.
Well, it would certainly send a message to government that, hey, if our view is we want to keep the regional councillors for a wee while, we would only do that if we're prepared to have this new structure in place ahead of the next elections, which, it sounds like from our submission already, we can get on and do that. There's just got to be tension in the system, or we will just waste a bucket load of money on absolutely nothing.
But we're sorry.
Hang on, we're not going to head into debate here. Luke, is that possible, and is it a substantive change to the submission?
Yeah, it is possible to do that. It's not a substantive change, especially if we're talking about timing and sequencing. It's just reinforcing this point within what we've already got in there.
So the question then becomes to Councillor Coker whether it's necessary for her proposed amendment, which is trying to find its way to the Secretariat at the moment. Look, I'm going to finish the questions and then we're going to adjourn for a couple of minutes so that I can have a look at that and then we'll come back. Thank you. I've got Councillor Harrison Hunt next.
Sam was actually going to ask my second question. But I actually also wanted to highlight that the government have brought up the opportunity to collaborate early with partnering councils. Have we been doing that in regards to what things could look like around this reform and the representation?
Yes, so the Mayor has met with Selwyn and Waimakariri, and yeah, so we have been engaging with the other officials as well.
There's been a number.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Sorry, Mary, could you just put that on?
So as well as the meetings with Selwyn and Waimakariri, there's been a number of mayoral forums of mayors and CE workshops, full-day workshops around it.
Great.
So there has been collaboration.
And I wouldn't expect all of the views of the neighbouring councils would be in the submission, but is there anything that's highlighted that would actually reflect their position also?
I mean, there will be some consistencies with what we've raised. I can't tell you off the top of my head now in terms of what are in there. But fundamentally, I think everybody can agree that it's the right time to have a review.
Yep.
And the right time to try and get the best value for all of our ratepayers across the region. and that taking the sort of evidence focus first and then reorganising based on what that analysis tells us is appropriate.
So the amendment that Sam is thinking about putting forward, I don't think it's actually an amendment, but would that address the timing issues that we have around the elections and the political timing of representation reviews, etc., if we got ECAN to push forward 18 months and the election actually started the reform?
So yeah, I mean that amendment would put a sort of a
Clear timeline.
a clear timeline,
Yep.
which would be, reasonably appropriate. So long as we have the right frameworks and ability to actually go ahead and do the work that we're required to do.
Great. Last thing is, I'd be really keen to say in the submission somehow that we're willing to collaborate with the other neighbouring councils to put forward this this amendment come the next election. I'm not sure what that means to everyone else, but
Luke, thank you very much. There's been some very robust discussion and questions here, and I'm keen to understand before I adjourn briefly whether the direction of travel that we're heading to look at, whether that in any way weakens or complicates the submission. I'm just always nervous about doing changes like this on the fly when there has been a significant amount of work gone on in the background to get us to where we are. So before I break for the adjournment, is where we're heading at the moment, is that something that you think is sensible and achievable in light of what the general thrust of our submission?
It is, yes. Nothing that has been suggested changes the intent and focus of what's within the submission. It just clarifies a few things.
Thank you very much for that, Luke. That's really helpful. We're just going to break for a couple of adjournments so I can get my head around what this potential amendment or changes to the substantive looks like. Thank you. thank you everyone for your patience and allowing us a little bit of time to work through that. We have some revised wording which is up on the screen, 3A. Yes. And I am happy to move this. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Melanie. So, right. So, before we head into vote on this, can I ask everyone to make sure that they've got their votendo logged in so that we don't have delays following debate, please? Yep. Okay. Okay, so the other issue that we just need to address is around any minor changes for wording. Can I just have that pulled up on the screen, please, as to where that is?
Are you looking for A?
Yeah, what have we got there?
No.
No,
Okay, you want the additional?
yes, please. Right, let me draw your attention then to paragraph number 4 there, delegates authority to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and named councillors to approve any further changes to the draft council submission on the simplifying local government proposal.
Could you add myself in there and Jake?
Well, I'm going to suggest that it's Melanie in there first, given that she was the one that kicked off some of the conversations around this. Are you happy with that? Thank you, Melanie. Tyrone, Councillor Fields, as the Deputy Chair and all-important councillor for Banks Peninsula, I think it'll be appropriate that you're also there to have your input to any sign-off. So have we got... no, I think I've got a seconder. Who was my seconder? Oh, Councillor Coker. So we've got Councillor Coker and Councillor Fields to be there with the Mayor and Deputy to approve any further just drafting changes after today if this passes. Thank you. Melanie, question?
What sort of changes do you anticipate?
I don't know, it might just be minor wording or grammatical errors. Might not be any. It's just as a backstop in case something comes.
Final wording for 3 as well.
Yeah.
In the submission.
I don't think you need to worry about too much extra workload. Councillor Johansson, question?
Yeah, I just wondered if there needs to be a noting provision around adding the concern around the water quality and the nitrates. So is staff just going to add that in magically and then what's...
Yeah, number 4 will allow that to happen. I think we had staff comment that could be added in there at a high level without going too far into the weeds with it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, they are remaining in place to govern existing functions, so I think it's perhaps less important. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Can I just check then, please, on the votendo that we've got there? It's written up as an amendment, but it's actually not an amendment, it's a substantive. Thank you for that. So we'll now head in. Yep, okay. Recognising that it is, where does it say that? Approve any further minor changes. There we are. That puts to bed any concerns about that. And so I will open the table for debate now, please. Do we have anyone that wishes to debate this? Councillor Peters.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for your efforts in pulling this together for us, and really hope that as this submission goes in, that the government will listen to what we're saying. This is, as you say, once in generation changes for local government, and we've got one chance to get this right. So here's hoping that they'll take note of what we're saying, and that we can get the structure right, we can get the CTB right, we can get the governance of our regions and city and districts right in the interim through to getting this reorganisation done. Hopefully we can land this reorganisation to the benefit of all and for the benefit of Christchurch from our point of view, but also for the whole region. We need to get this right and really hope that the government will listen. And with regards to the who's going to pay for this reorganisation, here's hoping the government won't just land it on our ratepayers, because they can't afford it.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. I've got Councillor Coker, followed by Councillor Scandrett.
What I would like to see is basically for a review you need independence. So there needs to be independent people coming from outside of the sector and then doing a proper analysis and interviewing people and figuring out what's wrong, if there is something wrong, and working out the simplest and easiest way to amend it rather than necessarily a huge reorganisation. I'm not necessarily in favour of it, it's not required. So I think the least amount of money we can spend on this, the better. That's why I suggest that we don't go around reorganising things until we actually come to the conclusion that that's what we need to do. So I'm all for reducing duplication. I think that's a good outcome if we can get that from this regional reorganisation plan. Let's hope that happens, and if big changes happen, that they happen in time for the next election so that we're all clear and don't have a big kerfuffle a year after the next one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coker. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you. I guess when any of these things are happening, we've got a lot happening at the moment dictated from government, from Wellington, is that what's the end game? The complaints and the concerns I get from people are a disconnected process which takes far too long, costs far too much money, and it's actually taken the person, the ratepayer, out of the process, because they're almost not allowed to sit in front of an RMA hearing. So I'm hoping that the end game that we will be part of actually has a smooth transition to a really focused end game, which is something that will work for all people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Deputy Chair, Councillor Fields.
Thank you. I think most of it's been said already, but I'll just reiterate. I'm obviously supportive of the recommendation. I think the staff work's been exemplary. And I don't think too many people are going to disagree with the concept of simplification and just sort of lining things up. I particularly want to speak in support of the amendment that was put up about the keeping the regional council in place, regardless of how you feel about the regional council, whether you think it's a great thing or otherwise. I just what we're effectively undergoing is a restructure, and I've seen a few restructures in my time, and there seem to be ways to make people feel like that they're doing something important and clever, but often they don't really land where you want them to. So I just think that while we're going through this restructure, that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and do keep the regional council in place for as long as it needs to be in place. I mean, I'd probably strengthen the wording there, but it's a good compromise because again, until we actually land where we need to land, we're actually going to need the structures and the governance function in place of the regional council, and I just don't see any sense of throwing it out before we're actually ready to move on. And then to echo my colleague Councillor Kewen, is that often if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Maybe there were some broken things here, but again, let's just do it in a measured way rather than just break everything and let it fall apart before we reassemble it. Cheers.
Thank you, Councillor Fields. Now I've got Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy with this submission as well, and I think the key point here really is around, logically working through the need for the regional council. But I think the most significant thing here is that we've basically said to the government, we want to get on and do this reform as quickly as possible. So if they're prepared to get it ready so in time for our next elections, that we have this new structure in place, then we're effectively saying, hey, keep the regional council until that point in time. But we're saying to them, if you can't get it ready and can't have it done within that next 2.5 years, then actually just get on with what you're proposing to do. So I think the submission makes sense in the sense that, if they can get everything moving quicker, save people a lot more money, then we don't mind, obviously, the regional council staying in that governance role for the next wee while. But I think the cool thing is we're saying to them at the same time, if you can't do that, then get on and change ECAN.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge the work that staff have done on the submission, and I do support the amendment. I can't see us taking on a huge extra cost and burden, and then still not coming up with something for a long time. Much better to actually get that certainty and keep the existing structure in place. So I completely support the amendment. But I do want to say I'm incredibly concerned. Just to quote a former ECAN councillor who was sacked by the previous time that central government sacked the elected ECAN, she said it was all about water when they appointed the commissioners. And she says that what she's seeing as of this reform is that it will be costly financially and to the environment, leading to poorer water quality and quantity and air quality. And she says economic growth must be done within environmental constraints. She sees this as a quick grab for growth and greed. And I just want to caution us, because I totally understand the need to look at local government reform and to look at simplifying how we do things, but that cannot be an excuse to destroy our environment for the sake of just economic growth. We need to look after our people and we need to look after our environment. And I'm really concerned that some of the proposals, if you look at the next submissions that we have, these are proposals that are all about making it easier to exploit the environment, to harm the community with worse air quality, more pollution, less controls on protection of water and our aquifers. We have got a nitrate crisis, a nitrate emergency in our region declared by ECAN. We are seeing huge impacts on our groundwater with the conversion to dairying and the fertiliser that's going in. And I'm really concerned that within the structure and within our submission, we are not clear enough about the perceived risk and we're not clear enough about the perceived mitigation. But I support the work that staff have done. I do think, and I look forward to the additional wording being added, because I think fundamentally what we do not want to see is our water deteriorating any more than it already is. We actually want to see it be improved. And there's a regional function there that needs to be talked about, because long term, our drinking water is at huge risk from the nitrate levels in the neighbouring areas.
Thank you, Councillor Johansson. Councillor Kewen.
Yeah, without 3A being there, I wouldn't have supported this, although Yanni nearly talked me out of that, with reminding us that they declared their nitrate emergency. It's not an emergency at this point in time, could be one day, but there's a lot of misinformation around the water and at different times, depending on which political bent you have. I almost think there's almost no one in this country that's out to ruin the environment. There's almost no one that's out to, farmers have done an incredible job of cleaning up a number of the waterways and making them better, and the riparian planting and stuff has been incredible work. And food's got to be made somewhere in the world, and to have more sustainable farmers in this country doing it than ones that do destroy the environment in other countries doing it to feed the same people should be applauded. I don't think the changes that will come will save any time or any money. Often we go through, and it's been raised by a couple of people here, often we'll rejig all the chairs on the Titanic, but at the end of the day the Titanic still sinks. Doesn't change the outcome. And so will public transport be more efficient or cheaper? No. Will the rates be lower? No. Will you get things consented faster? No. None of those things will change, I don't believe, by going through this, but we'll go through it. But the one reason why I do support 3A is the previous government got rid of the health boards during a health pandemic, and for great effect, because the postcode lottery got worse, the cost of health has gone up on an exponential scale. Health workers are quite upset, and the public now no longer have a conduit through to the health system. So sometimes when you go for change, it doesn't actually leave you any better off, and in health it's left us as a country much worse off. So always be careful what you wish for, because you sometimes don't quite get your Christmas list.
Thank you, Councillor Keown. I always look forward to your debate. Thank you. Councillor Harrison-Hunt.
Classic Councillor Keown rage bait. And, I would invite our council to visit Lake Ellesmere, because there is generations and generations worth of damage there, to the point where you can barely see through the water. There you go. And he is right. There is a lot of farmers doing fantastic work. There's a lot of native planting along the waterways, reducing those nitrates and ensuring that the waterway health is there. But there are also ones who are highly damaging within our lands. And actually, to be honest with you, the ones who were elected into the Environment Canterbury roles actually knew water really well. I can honestly say that I don't know water as well as I do with those governors, because I obviously am representing a metropolitan area, of which there is a lot of non-permeable surfaces, concrete jungle, if you will. And I think that's the best way to go between now and the next 18 months after that's defunct. I also think that there lies a lot of financial and political risk if they did follow through with the proposal that was there, only because the cost always comes down to our ratepayers. And if we reflect on Auckland going into the super city, they had to front up with a lot of money. And I do want to talk to the government around understanding and noticing that, and remind them that there is an election coming up. So it'd be really good to see that the local voice is taken into account. The last thing I want to talk about actually is that local voice, and we've heard from mayors and councillors from other neighbouring councils who are worried about the reform. And obviously, with us being a metropolitan area of which more than 60% reside in Canterbury, they are worried about losing that local voice. So I am looking forward to seeing what the government come up with in regards to having that representation. And I also do remind them that there are a lot of voters of different political persuasions in those neighbouring councils, of which would be extremely beneficial to make sure that their local voice is looked after. That's all I've got to say for that. I think everything else has been stated really well. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Coker and McDonald on putting in that amendment. I think it's a great move. It'll save a lot of money if that does come through, and it'll be really good. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison-Hunt. So I'll just close us off and recognise and thank staff for the enormous amount of work that has gone into this. Thank you to your teams. Thank you also to Luke for fronting it today and presenting to us. Very helpful presentation that helped us to really focus on the issues today and summarise the submission. Thank you for that. Recognise we've had ample opportunity as elected members to have some input into this. Thank you for staff for enabling that. It's great to see the collaboration around the table. Thank you to my colleagues for working together today to land on something that, recognising that this is politics, but I think we've landed today somewhere with something that everybody can live with. So thank you for that. I recognise this is only a proposal at this, and while we've made a start and we support the reform objectives, I recognise that actually we're a long way off from a workable model, and fully support that claim that and our approach that form will follow function. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that functional review comes out, and watch with interest as to how this proposal develops over time. So let's move this on, and we'll open up the voting, please, on this particular item on Votendo. Thanks. Is Councillor McClellan online? Thank you.
Yes, and I think I voted. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Vote's closed. Thank you very much for that. Well done. So before we move on to agenda item number 8, I do have Helen Broughton. I'm just going to invite Helen.